My name is Edward. I am 68 years old, and I never thought that the happiest day of my daughter's life would also become one of the most painful days of mine. It was her wedding day. Everything looked perfect. The flowers, the music, the guests all dressed up, and the smile on her face. As her father, I had been waiting for this day for years. I raised her alone after her mother passed away when she was only 10. Every sacrifice I made, every hour of hard work, every tear I held back, it was all to give her the best future possible. When the time came, I walked up to her. I handed her an envelope with a gift inside. It wasn't just money. It carried something much deeper, something that represented a lifetime of sacrifice and love. I expected a hug, maybe even a few tears of gratitude. Instead, what she said cut me to my core. She raised her glass, looked me in the eyes, and said, "All my life I wanted to have a different father, and finally this dream has come true." Her words echoed in my ears. Everyone around laughed and clapped, thinking it was just a light-hearted joke. But for me, it wasn't a joke. My heart sank. She turned to her new father-in-law, hugged him tightly, and said, "Now, I finally have the father I always wished for." I stood there frozen for a second. The world around me blurred. I felt like a stranger at my own daughter's wedding. After everything I had done, after every night I went hungry so she could eat, after every dream I gave up so she could chase hers, this was what I received in return. Without saying a word, I turned around and walked out of the wedding hall. I could hear the music, the laughter, the cheers, but it all felt so distant. Each step away from that place felt heavier than the last. But what my daughter didn't know was what I had left inside that envelope. She thought it was just a gift of money. She thought I would always remain the man she could throw away and replace. But when she opened it later that night, her world fell apart. To be continued.
Later that evening, while the wedding party was in full swing, my daughter finally sat down with her husband and decided to open the envelope I had handed her. She expected cash, maybe a generous check, something she could use to start her new life. Instead, what she found left her speechless. Inside the envelope was not just money, though there was some, but also a collection of documents, letters, and photographs. At the very top was a letter written in my own handwriting. It began with words that made her hands tremble as she read them out loud. "My dear daughter, if you are holding this letter, it means you are starting a new chapter in your life. Before you leave my world completely, I want you to know the truth about the life you had, the sacrifices made for you, and the man you just dismissed as if I were nothing." She flipped through the pages and saw copies of receipts for her school tuition, medical bills, and even the mortgage I had carried for years just so she could have a safe home. There were letters I had written late at night when I was too tired to talk, telling her how proud I was, how much I missed her mother, and how I promised her mother on her deathbed that I would never let our daughter go without love or protection. Then came the photographs. Me working double shifts at the factory. Me standing alone at her school plays while other parents sat together. Me holding her birthday cakes year after year, smiling even though I had nothing else but her. Every picture told a story she had chosen to forget. But the most shocking part was at the bottom of the envelope. A legal document. It was the deed to the small family house she grew up in. I had signed it over to her. The very house built with years of sweat and sacrifice, the only piece of wealth I truly had. Alongside the deed was another note. This house was supposed to be your safe place, your inheritance from a father who gave everything for you. But today, when you said you always wanted another father, I realized maybe this house doesn't belong to you anymore. Maybe it belongs to someone who will value it, not despise where it came from. By the time you read this, the transfer papers will already be filed to someone else, someone who understands the meaning of family and gratitude. Her face went pale. The room that had been filled with laughter turned quiet as she read the words. Guests began whispering, wondering what could have shaken the bride so badly. Her new husband leaned in, confused, and tried to calm her down, but she was already in tears. She realized that in her moment of arrogance, in front of everyone, she had humiliated the one man who had stood by her side through everything. She thought calling another man her real father would be funny, maybe even flattering to her new family. But instead, it had cost her the most important relationship she ever had. As she clutched the papers, she whispered, "What have I done?" But it was too late. I was gone, and for the first time in her life, she felt the weight of what it meant to lose a father. To be continued.
The wedding reception, which only minutes earlier was filled with music and joy, suddenly shifted into an atmosphere of tension. My daughter sat at the main table, her hands trembling as she held the letter and documents. Tears ran down her cheeks, smudging her makeup. Guests whispered among themselves, confused and curious. Her new father-in-law, the man she had just called her dream father, looked uncomfortable. He had not expected such a scene. People were beginning to look at him with judgment in their eyes, wondering if he had somehow encouraged those words. Her new husband leaned close and whispered, "Why would you say something like that? Do you realize what you've done?" His voice was not gentle. It carried the weight of disappointment. The happiness of the evening seemed to evaporate. My daughter tried to explain, stammering through tears. "I thought it was just a joke. I didn't mean it. I never thought he would take it that way." But deep down, she knew it wasn't just a joke. For years, she had taken me for granted, believing I would always be there no matter what she said. One of my old friends, who had watched me walk out of the reception earlier, stood up and addressed her in front of everyone. "Do you even realize what that man has done for you? He worked himself to the bone to raise you alone. While other children had two parents, you had just him, and he never once complained. And tonight, instead of honoring him, you humiliated him. Do you think any amount of apologies will erase that?" The entire hall fell silent. Every eye turned toward my daughter. The weight of shame was crushing. Her new family looked embarrassed. Her new husband looked angry, and she looked broken. Meanwhile, I was driving away from the wedding hall in my old car. The road ahead was empty, but my heart was heavy. For years, I had feared this moment, the day my daughter would finally choose the world over me. And tonight, it had happened. I whispered to myself, "Margaret, my love, I kept my promise. I raised her, I gave her everything I could, but I don't know if I can give her any more." I spoke to my late wife as if she were sitting beside me. Back at the wedding, my daughter ran out into the night, still in her gown, holding the letter close to her chest. She wanted to find me before it was too late. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she shouted, "Dad! Dad! Please wait!" But I was already gone, swallowed by the darkness of the road. Her new husband came running after her, pulling her back. "You can't just run off like this. Everyone's watching. You need to pull yourself together." But she pushed him away and cried, "You don't understand. He was everything, and I destroyed it. I destroyed him." The guests murmured, some shaking their heads in disapproval. The wedding that was supposed to be the happiest day of her life had turned into a nightmare. A public lesson in gratitude, love, and loss. For the first time in her life, she realized something terrifying. Money, marriage, and status meant nothing without the love of the one man who had given her everything. And now, she wasn't sure if she could ever get him back. To be continued. That night, after the wedding ended in whispers and awkward goodbyes, my daughter sat alone in her bridal suite. The room was decorated with roses and candles, but instead of feeling joy, she felt only emptiness. Her new husband tried to console her, but his patience was wearing thin. "You embarrassed yourself, your family, and me," he said sharply. "Why would you ever say something like that to your father?" She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. "I thought it was funny. I thought people would laugh and move on. I never realized how much it would hurt him." But the truth was, she did know. Deep inside, she had always resented the fact that her life wasn't perfect, that she didn't grow up with wealth or two parents. Instead of appreciating what she had, she let bitterness blind her to everything I had done. That night, sleep didn't come easily. She kept hearing my voice in the letter, seeing the photographs of me working long hours, remembering the birthdays I spent by her side when no one else was there. For the first time, guilt weighed heavier than the wedding dress on her shoulders. The next morning, while most newlyweds would be boarding a plane for their honeymoon, she insisted they drive back to the old neighborhood where she grew up. Her husband didn't understand, but she begged, "I need to see him. I need to tell him I'm sorry." When they pulled up to the small, familiar house, they saw a moving truck parked outside. Boxes were stacked on the curb, and a "for sale" sign stood planted in the yard. My daughter froze. She rushed to the door, knocked desperately, and called out, "Dad! Dad! Are you in there?" But the neighbor stepped forward and shook his head. "He left early this morning, said he was moving to a quieter place outside the city. Didn't leave a forwarding address, just told me to keep an eye on things until the buyer comes." Her knees buckled. She sat down on the front steps, clutching the letter to her chest, crying so hard that her new husband didn't know what to do. The weight of reality crashed down on her. I wasn't just hurt, I was gone. Inside the moving truck were pieces of my life, old furniture, faded photo albums, and the tools I used for decades at the factory. Each box carried stories she had never cared to ask about. Now she wanted to know everything, but it was too late. The new father-in-law, the man she had proudly embraced at the wedding, came by later that day. He tried to comfort her, but his words only deepened her pain. "Your father was a good man. He didn't deserve that." Even he, the man she had called her dream father, looked at her with disappointment. Her husband pulled her aside. "Listen, we just got married, but you need to understand something. If you can disrespect your own father like that, what's stopping you from doing the same to me one day? Love means loyalty, respect. Without that, we have nothing." The marriage, less than 24 hours old, was already cracking. Meanwhile, I was miles away, unpacking boxes in a small, rented cabin near a quiet lake. For the first time in years, I felt a strange kind of peace. The hurt was still there, sharp as ever, but so was relief. I no longer had to fight for a place in my daughter's heart. I had given her everything, and now, finally, I could let go. But little did I know, the decision I made that night to walk away and disappear would change not only her life, but mine as well. To be continued.
Days turned into weeks after the wedding. My daughter's marriage, which should have been filled with joy and discovery, instead became a cloud of regret and silence. She barely smiled. Her husband grew more distant, frustrated that she could not let go of the past. Every night, she sat at the edge of the bed, holding the letter I had written, reading it over and over. She would whisper to herself, "Dad, please come back. Please give me one more chance." But her prayers went unanswered. Finally, she decided to find me. She searched through old friends, called distant relatives, even drove hours to towns she thought I might move to. Each lead was a dead end. It was as though I had disappeared completely. Her new husband grew impatient. "You can't live like this," he said one evening. "We're married now. You're supposed to be building a life with me, not chasing ghosts." Through tears, she replied, "He's not a ghost. He's my father, and I destroyed him. If I don't make this right, I'll never forgive myself." Their arguments grew worse. The sparkle of the honeymoon phase was gone. Guests who had attended the wedding still whispered about what happened that night, and the shame followed her everywhere. Even her in-laws treated her differently, no longer seeing her as the bright, perfect bride, but as the daughter who had broken her father's heart. One afternoon, while cleaning up old wedding gifts, she found a small, unopened box tucked in the corner. Inside was a pocket watch, not new, but polished carefully. It was the same watch I had worn for years, a gift from her mother before she died. Attached was a tiny note in my handwriting. "Time is all I ever gave you, and it was worth every second." She broke down completely. That was the moment she realized my love had never been about money or houses or sacrifices. It had always been about time, the most precious thing a parent can give a child. And she had thrown it all away with a single careless toast. Meanwhile, in my cabin by the lake, I lived quietly. I fished, I read, I walked in the woods. The silence was peaceful, but every so often I would look at the empty chair across from me and imagine my daughter sitting there. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't erase the memory of her words. All my life, I wanted to have a different father. They cut deeper than any wound. One evening, as the sun set over the water, I received a letter in the mail. It was from her. The envelope was smudged with tear marks, the handwriting shaky. Inside, she had written pages, apologizing, begging for forgiveness, telling me she finally understood everything I had done for her. She wrote, "I don't know if you will ever forgive me, Dad, but I will never stop trying. I don't want another father. I only want you." I held the letter in my hands for a long time, staring out at the lake. Part of me wanted to get in the car and drive back that very moment. But another part of me whispered, "Can you really trust her again, or will she hurt you once more?" I folded the letter, placed it in my pocket, and sat there in the fading light, torn between the love of a father and the pain of betrayal. To be continued. I sat on the porch of my little cabin, the letter trembling in my hands. The words my daughter had written echoed in my mind. "I don't want another father. I only want you." The pain inside me fought against the love I still carried for her. For days, I didn't reply. I went about my quiet life, fishing at dawn, chopping wood, cooking simple meals. But every evening, I found myself pulling that letter out of my pocket, reading it again, wondering if her regret was real or just temporary guilt. One night, I dreamed of my late wife. She stood by the lake, smiling softly. In the dream, she said, "Edward, she's still our little girl. Don't let anger steal the last chance you have with her." I woke up with tears on my face, unsure if it was just a dream or a message. Meanwhile, my daughter's life was unraveling. Her husband grew colder with each passing day. He told her, "If you can't let go of your father and focus on us, then maybe this marriage was a mistake." His words cut her deeply, but she knew he was right about one thing.
She couldn't move forward without making things right with me. So she made a decision. She would not just write letters, she would find me. She drove miles across the state, visiting every small town she could, asking strangers if they'd seen an older man with gray hair and tired eyes, often carrying a fishing rod. Most shook their heads. Some gave directions, but nobody knew for sure. Finally, one afternoon, she stopped at a small diner near a lake. The waitress, a kind middle-aged woman, looked at the photograph my daughter showed her. She said, "Yes, he comes in here sometimes. Quiet man, sits in the corner with a cup of coffee and a book. Doesn't talk much, but he looks lonely." My daughter's heart skipped a beat. She rushed out, following the directions to the cabin by the lake. When she arrived, she saw smoke rising gently from the chimney. Her hands shook as she walked up the path. Every step felt heavier, like her guilt was pressing down on her. She knocked on the door once, then twice, whispering, "Please, Dad, please be here." Inside, I heard the knock. My heart froze. I knew that knock. I hadn't heard it in years, but a parent never forgets the sound of their child calling them. I stood there for a long moment staring at the door. My hand hovered over the doorknob. My mind screamed with conflicting voices. One saying, "Don't open it. Don't let her hurt you again." Another saying, "She's still your daughter." Finally, I opened the door. And there she was, standing in her wedding dress, still wrinkled and stained, as if she hadn't taken it off since that night. Her makeup was gone, her eyes swollen from crying. She clutched the letter to her chest like it was her lifeline. "Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I'm so sorry. Please, please don't shut me out." I stared at her, my heart torn between love and pain. For the first time in my life, I didn't know whether to hold my daughter or close the door. To be continued. The cool evening breeze swept through the open doorway as we stood frozen, me on one side, my daughter on the other. She looked fragile, broken in a way I had never seen before. Her hands shook as she held the letter, her lips trembling. "Dad, I don't want money. I don't want a house. I just want you. Please, don't turn me away." I studied her face carefully. This wasn't the confident, proud young woman who had mocked me at her wedding. This was the little girl I once carried on my shoulders, the one who clung to me after nightmares, the one who cried for her mother every night. But the wound inside me was still raw. My voice came out heavy. "Do you know what it felt like, standing there hearing those words from you? After everything I gave, after all I sacrificed, you told me I wasn't enough. You replaced me in front of the world." Her tears spilled freely. She fell to her knees on the porch, sobbing. "I was selfish. I was blind. I thought being funny would make me look strong, but I only looked cruel. Dad, I destroyed the one person who never left me. Please, if you can't forgive me, then at least let me say I'm sorry to your face." The sight of her on her knees shattered me. My heart ached, torn between anger and the unbreakable bond of blood. Slowly, I reached down and lifted her up. Her eyes met mine, red, swollen, desperate. I whispered, "You are my daughter. Nothing will ever change that. But trust, once broken, it doesn't come back easily. If you want me in your life, You'll have to prove it, not with words, but with actions. She nodded furiously, clinging to my hand. I will, Dad. I'll spend the rest of my life proving it. For the first time in weeks, I let her step inside the cabin. She looked around at the modest room, the simple wooden furniture, the stack of books, the fishing gear by the door. It was nothing like the house she had grown up in, yet it carried the warmth of a home she had nearly lost forever. We sat together in silence. She laid her head on my shoulder, just like she used to when she was little. For a moment, I felt peace, but I also felt the heavy question lingering inside me. Could I truly trust her again? Meanwhile, her husband was back at the city, pacing angrily. He called her phone again and again, but she didn't answer. His pride was wounded. He couldn't understand why she would abandon their marriage, even briefly, to chase the forgiveness of a father she had humiliated. Her new family began to whisper. The in-laws were furious, saying, "If she runs back to her father so easily, how can she be loyal to our son?" Back at the cabin, as the night deepened, my daughter finally whispered, "Dad, I don't know if my marriage will survive, but I don't care. You're the one I can't lose. If I have to choose between him and you, I'll choose you." Her words pierced me. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part felt sorrow. I didn't want her marriage to crumble, but I also couldn't deny the relief in hearing her finally value me above everything else. I looked out the window at the still waters of the lake and said softly, "We'll see if time can heal this. For now, stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll talk." She nodded, finally smiling through her tears. And for the first time since that terrible wedding night, I allowed myself to hope. To be continued.
The night my daughter stayed in the cabin, I barely slept. She lay on the old couch, curled up in a blanket, her tear-stained face finally at rest. I sat in my chair by the window, staring at the lake, my thoughts a storm. How could I forgive so easily after years of sacrifice, only to be replaced with a careless sentence? Yet, how could I not forgive when every part of me still saw the little girl who once clung to my hand at school gates, afraid to walk in alone? By dawn, I rose quietly and brewed coffee. She woke, groggy, her wedding dress wrinkled from a second night's wear. She looked at me nervously, as if afraid I would tell her to leave. Instead, I handed her a cup. "We need to talk," I said. She nodded, gripping the mug tightly. "Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I know I wounded you deeper than I can ever repair, but I promise I will spend every day trying to be the daughter you deserve. I don't care how long it takes." Her words were trembling, but sincere. For the first time, I believed her. I leaned back, sighing. "You don't know what it's like to give your whole life to someone, only to feel like you were never enough. That night, you didn't just embarrass me, you erased me, in front of everyone." She lowered her head, ashamed. "I know, and I'll carry that guilt forever. But Dad, please let me try. Please let me be better." We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I said, "All right, but understand this. Love is not just words. You'll have to show me, earn back my trust, and maybe, just maybe, we can rebuild what was broken." She nodded, tears flowing again. "I'll prove it, Dad. I swear." Over the weeks that followed, she kept her promise. Almost every weekend she drove out to the cabin. She cooked meals for me, helped clean, even joined me on fishing trips, though she had no patience for sitting still. At first, I kept a wall between us. But little by little, I felt the distance closing. One afternoon, as we sat by the lake, she said softly, "Dad, I told my husband that I'm not choosing between you and him. I want both of you in my life. If he can't accept that, then maybe he was never the right man for me." I looked at her, surprised by her strength. She had been selfish before, but now she was learning to stand firm. Her marriage was tested. Her husband didn't like her constant trips, her new loyalty to me. They argued often. But in the end, he saw her transformation. The humility, the responsibility, the maturity she had gained by facing her mistakes. Slowly, even he softened. One day, to my surprise, he came to the cabin with her. He stood awkwardly at the door, unsure if I would slam it in his face. Instead, I invited him in. Over dinner, he admitted, "Sir, I judged you wrong. I thought you were just a bitter old man, but I see now you gave everything for her. I respect that." It wasn't easy, but bridges began to rebuild. Months later, my daughter and I returned to the city together. She took me to a small family gathering. This time, she raised her glass, looked me in the eye, and with a steady voice declared, "This man is my father, the one who raised me alone, the one who gave me everything when he had nothing. I once made the biggest mistake of my life by dishonoring him, but today I want the world to know I am proud to be his daughter." The room filled with applause. For the first time since the wedding, I felt whole again. Not because of the praise, but because my daughter finally understood the value of a father's love. Later that night, as we walked home, she slipped her arm through mine like she used to, as a child. "Dad," she whispered, "thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on you." I smiled softly, looking at her with pride. "We both made mistakes, sweetheart. But family? Family always finds its way back." And as we walked together under the glow of streetlights, I realized something. Love, when tested, doesn't disappear. It bends, it breaks, but if you fight for it, it returns, stronger than ever before. The chapter of pain had ended. A new one had begun. Not of perfection, but of forgiveness, growth, and the kind of bond that no words could ever shatter again.